Okay, today is May the 15th, and I am getting close to the start of my journey, so I figured, well, now is as good time as any to kind of do a walk around of the motorcycle that's going to be taking me on this adventure. The first leg, is going to be from Easley, South Carolina, ultimately up to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. And that's going to start the Panama American Highway for 2023. I figured this trip, with the additional time I'm going to spend out west, is going to be 5 to 6 months. So hopefully I'll be back in Easley sometime around the end of November, beginning of December. But I figured before I do that, I washed the bike today and just want to kind of give it the front to back, side to side, what I'm doing, what I'm taking, kind of as a tick of the memory for me, just to have this on file. The bike is a 2023 DR650. I picked it up brand new on January the 10th and have been modifying it since I got the bike to get it ready for this journey. One of the things that slowed me down were supply chain issues. We just had trouble getting some of the parts, some of the suspension parts. As I walk through the bike, it's going to be evident that I've tried to stick with a couple of main brands so that I wouldn't just have a total mismatch of parts as I'm going through my build. I bought a lot of parts from Pro Cycle, bought a lot of parts from Rocky Mountain ATV and Revzilla. Those have been the three main companies that I use to source all my parts. I paid for everything out of pocket. Nothing was given to me, donated, or sent to me for review. I've got a little over 5,000, I think about 52, let's take a look here, 5312 on the clock. So that's how many miles I've put on the bike since getting it brand new. It had about 0.7 of a mile on it when I got the thing from the dealership. So let me start at the front and work my way back so you can see what I've done. Now, I just put on two brand new tires, the front and the rear. These are a brand out of Germany, 50/50, that came highly rated. I got, well, the 5300 out of the Trail Wings. They were absolutely terrible off-road and pretty good on-road. I don't know how these tires are going to do on distance riding. I feel a little more hum when I'm going down the street. That's the newness of the knobs. As you can see, the chicken strips haven't even worn off the tires yet. Just got about maybe 25 or 30 miles on them. But anyways, front to back, new rubber. I did put on a Warp 9 fork brace, and I use Cogent suspension for the front and the rear. I got a set of springs in the front, revalving, and different oil. So the front is definitely set up and balanced well. I've got a fender brace so that I can run this fender bag. I got a spare tube and some of the tools for the change out in the bag. Because I'm running Oxford heated grips, I needed to have a little more power available, so I changed the front and the rear lights to LEDs, and I added this Baja Works windshield. Caused me to turn the directionals around so they're a little bit higher. I think they actually fit the tank pretty well. As you can see, I've gone with the Tusk handguards. I also went with the Tusk Big Bar kit with 3/4 inch risers. These are the Oxford heated grips. Of course, I've got my iPhone 12. I've got my Garmin Zumu XT motorcycle GPS, and this bike basically is not a lot of frills on it, not a lot of technology. The most technology is an electric starter and CDI ignition. I did add 2-inch mirror extenders, maybe a little more than 2 inches when all is said and done, but it puts them up a little bit higher, pretty much at the level for the adventure style mirrors, the ones that fold down. I can't remember the names of them, but anyways, the mirrors are up at a good height. The riding triangle is one of the things that I worked at changing. So I did use a bigger set of IMS Adventure foot pegs with a kit that lowers the pegs about 1 3/4 inches and moves them back 1 inch, so I get a lot more room you know, for my boot to fit under the shifter, and to give a little more relief to my knees. As you can probably see from this angle, there's a fuel filter on there, and if you haven't noticed, this is that Chirby's 6.6 gallon fuel tank. So I'm up from 3.4 gallons to 6.6. There's a look at the Cogent rear shock. I don't know if it shows up in this picture, but the carburetor with that brass screw sticking down from the front is the only change that I've done to the fuel system, which just gives me the ability to correct the leanness that comes from the factory, give a little more fuel at idle, and that really smoothed it out a bit. This is a JNS chain guard, so that if for some reason I have an issue with the chain, it's going to supposedly protect the cases. As you can see, I've got the Tusk luggage mount system on the bike, and I've got a Sargent seat. I've got the Tusk Olympus. I think it is either an 8 or a 10 liter tank bag that's on here, and I do have the rear mount that's from Tusk. So this is an all integrated type system. I'm still running the stock exhaust can, and I added the T-Rex center stand and the Chirby's plastic bash plate, just so that if I hit something, it will slide over. Is this gonna, you know, work well if I'm out bashing rocks out in the desert? Probably not, but for what I intend to use the bike for, I think that's going to be more than adequate. So this is pretty much the bike. What I'm going to do, I've just serviced it, so I've done 2 oil changes, I've done the valve check twice, and the bike is now cleaned up and pretty much ready to go. The Sargent seat that I put on here really has been a butt saver, or a lifesaver. It's basically given me the ability to go from 30 miles or 50 miles and getting off the bike crippled to being able to ride, you know, 200 to 300 miles in a day and still be functional. You got to get off and stretch as you would on any motorcycle, but at least it's doable. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically stop the recording. I'm going to put on the side bags and the top bag and kind of load this bike up in the configuration that I'm going to be traveling in, and just to give you a look at where it's at. So as the bike sits right now, let me kind of step back a little bit. The bike basically sits at just under 400 pounds. I'm putting about 100 pounds, maybe a little less, of luggage and gear on the bike, and that's going to be how it's ridden. So the bike, fully, you know, full tank of gas, all laden out, is going to be right at about 500 pounds when it's all said and done. Just getting on the bike. This is the cockpit view, so hopefully you can kind of look down. You've got the tank, you've got the iPhone, you've got the Zumo, you got the speedometer, which you can see, the indicator lights over there, of course the ignition switch, the starter button over here, the high-low beam, the directionals, the horn, and the setting for the Oxford grips. So this is pretty much how the bike is when you're riding it. This is your view looking forward, and if anyone's watched any of my videos, you can